Hey there, friends. Apologies for not having a new glitch video up this week. I made a comment about it in the server, but not everyone's in the server, so I wanted to let everyone else know. There was a bit of a family emergency this week that had me back in Kansas for a little while, and unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to get everything sorted out for this upcoming week, so I'm doing a compilation, sleep compilation of glitch stories on today, and Wednesday we'll be back to normal content. Next Monday will be more new glitch stories as well. And again, I do apologize. I don't like doing compilations too often, so especially not on glitch Mondays. So, anyways, friends, thank you for your understanding. I hope you appreciate this, or at least enjoy it. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope to see you again here very soon. But until then, my friends, much love and sleep well. Hello, Raven. Big fan of your channel, of course. I've shared a story with you before that you did end up reading. Thank you, by the way. And the reason I'm sending this story in is because this literally just happened. It's currently Friday, March 21st, 2025. The glitch occurred about 15 minutes ago. It's currently 8:27 p.m. Eastern Time while typing this. The glitch in question involves my two dogs. Well, more specifically, one of my two dogs, but the other was present when it happened. My two dogs are named Jellybean, female, and Rhett Butler, typically shortened to just Rhett, male. The two of them had been in their crates for most of the evening. I was home alone when this happened, so when Rhett started barking in his crate wanting out, I got up and left my room to let them both out. I let Jellybean out of her crate first, and she made a beeline to the kitchen where the back door is where we let the dogs out. When I let Rhett out of his crate, he went straight for their shared water bowl and started drinking. Rhett usually doesn't drink for very long, so I headed to the kitchen and to the back door to let Jellybean out, since she was already there. We have a back door and a screen door, so when going out into the back door, you have to open the back door first, then the screen door. Jellybean went outside, and at that moment, I could still hear Rhett drinking from the water bowl. I pulled the screen door closed, but not enough for the latch to catch, and called for Rhett to come outside. I heard him stop drinking, but he never came. I called out again, no Rhett. I tried a third time using his full name in a stern voice, but he didn't come. Rhett does not ignore people when his name is called, so this was unusual for him. From where I was standing at the back door, I could see the living room, but I could not see Rhett, as there was a chair blocking him from view. He's a very low-to-the-ground dog. I was confused as to why he wasn't coming when I called him, so I went back into the living room. Rhett was not there. I looked in the hallway to the right that leads into 3 separate rooms, my mother's room, my bedroom, and my bathroom, and he was not sitting there. I checked my room to see if maybe he went in. I had left my door open. No sign of him. I checked my bathroom, which had also been left open, but no Rhett. I checked my father's room, even though I knew that that was impossible since the door, that wasn't fully shut, but had been left open a crack, hadn't moved an inch. He wasn't there. I even checked behind the couch, even though he usually doesn't go back there, and he wasn't there. At this point, I'm incredibly confused. I stood in the middle of the living room to try to wrap my head around it when I looked out the screen door. Rhett was outside sniffing around. I just stood there dumbfounded. I'm trying to think of every rational way he could have gotten outside, but nothing comes to mind. He should have brushed up against me when going out the back door, but I never felt him. I should have heard his nails clicking on the kitchen floor. It's tile, and you can always hear the dogs walking on it, but I didn't hear that either. I was looking into the living room while he was still drinking, waiting for him to come outside, and I never saw him cross from the living room into the kitchen. I heard him stop drinking in the living room and then called him, but I never saw him. There is just no way that I can visualize him having gotten outside without me either hearing, feeling, or seeing him in some way. This is my first major glitch that I've experienced. I've had something disappear and return to the same spot that it should have been in, and I've even experienced a slight jump, the last story that I sent you. But those are relatively minor compared to the whole dog seemingly moving from one spot to another without seeing, hearing, or feeling him go by. Thank you for reading, Raven, and if you choose to put this in a video, thank you for listening. Maybe someone can help me make this make sense in the comments, because I'm completely stumped. My whole life, I've had strange happenings around me. Although I'm not sure any of them would be classed as a glitch, so maybe I'll save those for another day. My current story isn't a major time travel glitch or anything, but it was extremely weird and my husband experienced it with me, which means I'm not crazy, right? So here we are, currently in the process of remodeling and decorating our house. And due to being mucked around and ripped off by so many plasterers, plumbers, and electricians, we had decided to do the last bit of work ourselves. Anyway, on with the point of the story. One day a couple of weeks ago, my husband was out working and I was feeling particularly energetic and motivated. So, I decided to crack on and finish a few things in the downstairs shower room. The things I was working on that morning were applying silicone around the edge of the shower and finishing off a bit of painting after the plumber clumsily took a few chunks out of our wall. While I'm rather good at it, if I do say so, I'm not very good at being tidy when DIYing. So, I have a small collection of old clothes that I can just wipe my hands on when painting and whatnot. However, on this day, the call to DIY had taken me entirely by surprise, and I didn't give a thought to the fact that I was wearing a brand new top that I absolutely loved. I know, what an idiot. However, what makes me an even bigger idiot is that I realized this mistake about 5 minutes into working, and I couldn't be bothered to go upstairs and change into my work clothes. I justified this decision by telling myself that I'd be super careful and it would be fine. Anyway, about 5 minutes into applying the silicone, my husband returned from work and, as he usually does, he popped his head into the room to see how I was getting on. I told him everything was going well and he complimented my work. We got chatting and then my husband came right into the room and stood by my side to watch what I was doing while we talked and I finished up. I was distracted, the inevitable happened, and I got paint on my top. Facepalm. I figured the damage was done, said screw it, and just began using my top to wipe my hands on as I usually would. My husband and I continued chatting for about 10 minutes while I finished up the little bit of silicone and painting I had left. Then, I decided it was time for a well-deserved cuppa. My husband, very kindly, offered to make it for me. So, I went through the living room to sit down. I didn't quite get that far before I noticed something odd, though. My top was clean. Not even the smallest bit of paint or silicone was on it. I thought I was going mad. When my husband came in with my tea, I pointed it out, not sure whether I wanted to be in this weird situation or confirmed as mad, but he looked super confused too. We both knew that my top was destroyed, hand-sized smears of paint all over it. So, how in the 15 seconds it takes me to walk the distance between my shower and sofa was it now back to looking perfect and new? What the actual hell? Thank you for reading the story. I know it isn't particularly scary, but it certainly creeped us both out. I am, however, happy to have my top back, though. Hey, Raven. Big Mac here again. This will be my third story that I've submitted to you so far, and I would like to first give a shout out to the person who submitted the story to you about glitching on the road a lot. They had about 3 stories in one, I think, and the last one, the one with the truck in the middle of the highway, was the same as the kind of glitch I experienced. It's something I think about often because I've recently, since 2024, started researching a lot of the glitch in the Matrix, multiverse, timeline hopping, backrooms, mermaids, vampires, etc. Just from a lot of different experiences in life and stories I've heard from other people that were either pretty similar or just unbelievable that it's actually believable. Because don't they always say the truth is stranger than fiction? So basically, as I fell down this rabbit hole, I stumbled upon you, and I've been listening to your podcast ever since. I'm so grateful to have found your channel. I'm grateful that you found it too. Anyway, here's my story. I'm from Alabama in the USA, as I'd like to start off by saying. I can't remember where the submitter was from or if they even mentioned it, but I do know you have several people from all over the globe that submit. And I'm not even sure if location is a factor in glitches or not. But this is my location as of the time of the glitch. At the time, I drove a black/grayish, depending on how well your vision is, car. With my glasses, it was blackish. Without it, it was a blurry gray. Not that it matters. But it was a 2000 Jeep Cherokee. I would like to start by saying that I know exactly what the submitter meant by not being able to see the road when you're driving in certain cars, depending on the size of the car. You usually either see the one car directly in front of you, or the big transfer trucks. I had my daughter in September of 2013. I think she was almost a year old, or just a little over a year old when this happened, just to give you a time frame as well. So, 2014. Her dad and I packed up the car to go on a little ride to visit his sister in Montgomery. So naturally, we had to get on the interstates to get from our location to hers. I fed my daughter right before we left because, at the time, I was breastfeeding. And the trip was about an hour, so I didn't want my chest to fill up or get sore on the ride. Plus, I didn't want her to get cranky. So I killed 2 birds with 1 stone, basically. We left early in the day, enough to get there in a reasonable time to go out and do things that she wanted to show us, and places that she wanted to take us. Overall, it was a great trip and we had a great time. So let me cut back a second just to state that the fact that the drive up there was totally normal. Nothing felt off. Nothing strange happened, nothing felt glitchy at all. But the ride back to Montgomery was 85% of the time the complete opposite from the drive up. I have 2 or 3 other stories, so if you'd like to hear, I can definitely submit more of my Montgomery road trip madness collection as well. Well, on the ride back, it was still a little daylight, which was really good because, as I mentioned earlier, the color of my car depends on if I have my glasses or not. So, clearly, I can't see well at night, which is why it was good that we were able to leave in enough time to make it back before complete darkness. As we're coming back through, we pass Shorter and Tuskegee, to give you a sense of where about this glitch happened. We had not yet made it to Auburn, but if you know the area, then you know the distance between Tuskegee and Auburn. Not far at all. So between the 2 towns, I felt a little anxious. I just couldn't put my finger on it. My boyfriend at the time, my daughter's dad, said maybe it was because I couldn't see at dark, and as we reached Tuskegee, the sky began to darken for the night. Maybe it was that, or maybe I felt the tension in the air from what was about to soon happen, but for some reason, I could not shake this feeling. Now, before you guys wonder, why didn't he just drive if I couldn't see at night? Well, he would've, but I had to teach him to drive. He didn't know how at the time. He did practice driving around the neighborhood in my old car at the time, which was way smaller than my Jeep, and he tried driving the Jeep, but it felt it was too big to control first couple of times driving to drive it. So he didn't drive until after we split. I was always the designated driver. So back to the story. Between Tuskegee and Auburn, it started to darken into the nighttime sky, and I realized I was awake by myself. So I turned on some music to ease my tension. I was in the left lane because, at the time, I was a speed demon, and I was also ready to get home to release more milk. I was doing about 85, the speed limit was 70, so I wasn't going too far over the limit, because I had my baby in the back seat, so I was also cautious on top of my anxiousness. There were a lot of cars on the road, which is normal because there just typically are people on that highway for some reason at night. Both lanes were filled with cars, which kind of added more to my tension and anxiousness, and I couldn't really see past the second car ahead of me in both lanes, as I'm a short 5-footer, and I could barely reach my pedal without scooting the car seat all the way to the steering wheel. Might I add, I don't like the steering wheel to touch my knees, so I ride with it lifted all the way up, so I can sit up as high as possible and see as much as I can because of my small height. And with everyone else in the car being asleep at the time, I felt super responsible as I didn't want anything to go wrong on the ride home. So there weren't a second set of eyes on the road at the time. It was just mine. Which is fine by me because I don't like a backseat driver anyways. If you know the saying, you just know, but as we were driving, the cars seemed to spread out a bit, and some seemed to almost disappear. I woke my boyfriend up and told him, "Hey, I think I'm getting sleepy, can you wake up?" He asked me, "What do you mean?" And I told him, "I think I'm hallucinating. I just saw a car disappear. I need you to wake up. I don't want to be the only one watching the road while I'm driving just in case I fall asleep." You could say I'm a pretty paranoid person, so this ride back really had me rattled to the extreme. He straightened up in his seat and we talked a little to try to keep us up as he scrolled through his phone on Facebook or Instagram, or whatever app he was consumed in at the time. I wasn't really sure. He would just read some of the posts out to try to keep conversation up as we rode. I even cracked the windows a tad, just enough to feel the nighttime wind on my face and arms to wake me up a little bit, but not enough to reach to the back seat to have the baby get cold. As we're riding, I see the car in front of me and the car in front of the car in front of me swerve over from the left lane quickly into the right lane. No brakes, no nothing. I don't know how I saw it so well in the dark, but I told him immediately to grab the baby. He looked up and saw the same thing that I saw. Within the few seconds of me telling him to grab her and him looking up, we both saw a chest sitting in the middle of the road. Like a big, old-timey, pirate-looking treasure chest. I knew we were going to hit it without a shadow of a doubt in my mind, and my first thought was my daughter's safety above all else. Needless to say, he never made it to the back seat. By the time he looked up after what I said, it was too late. But it wasn't. Within those 10 seconds of the two cars ahead of me swerving from the very busy highway, from the left lane to now suddenly less packed highway in the right lane, me screaming to him to grab the baby, and him looking up, I had already braced for impact. But the impact never happened. Somehow we were in front of the chest, and right after we somehow got past the huge chest in the road, we heard a loud bam. Kind of like when a generator makes that loud sound when it goes out. We immediately looked into the side mirrors to see what the sound was, and noticed that there were no more cars and no chests on the road behind us. I was super confused. So I looked back ahead of me, and the cars in front were also gone. Somehow everyone else had disappeared. We were the only ones left on the road. It was so strange, but that's how we rode the rest of the way home. Just us on the road in silence from shock, I assume. I don't know if that was why I had such an anxious feeling, or if it was because it was getting dark and being nervous because I know I can't see in the dark, and I didn't want to have an accident at night. Did my energy shift because of the glitch, or was it even a glitch? Did we die? And that's why there was no one else on the road after we went through the chest and heard the loud boom? Was the loud boom us impacting with the chest, but we saw ourselves transport past it, and not realizing we actually hit the chest and died on impact, it sent us through it instead? And did we hear the crash of our own death moments right after? And was that the reason everyone else vanished so quickly? I don't know what to call it, but it definitely felt like one of the glitches that's left me wondering if I jumped timelines. Also, I want to add, I honestly believe that either I died and jumped, and my family survived without me, or we all died and all went to separate timelines. Because after that day, my boyfriend was never the same. He was always mean. He brushed me off all the time, and he was very distant. But before that, he was perfect. He was so sweet, and he adored me and my daughter. He was affectionate and clingy. He was the perfect person. I don't know who he was after that, but he wasn't the same. So I'm left wondering all the time, did I die that night? Did we all die that night? Is that why he was so different after then? And was it just a glitch, or did we timeline jump? Did I jump alone? Am I in the wrong timeline? It's safe to say after he changed drastically, we split up not too long after that. I'm confused because of the whole situation. I kept thinking back to that night, because I know for a fact he wasn't the same person I once knew. He was my very first relationship, and I knew him since the 9th grade. We were going to get married, and now it was like after all that, it all changed that night. I haven't gotten along with him since. I think Montgomery is just not a place I would like to visit anymore, and these glitches are why. Hello, Raven. I really like listening to your podcast when I'm doing my chores. I like your voice, and it matches well with the stories. Thank you. This just happened to me a few days ago. I don't know if this is a paranormal event or a glitch in the Matrix. First, a little thing about me. I'm a female in my late 20s, and I'm not from the US. So, I'm sorry if I have any mistakes in this email. I live alone in an apartment, and I work from home. I don't do drugs because any hard drugs or recreational drugs are illegal in my country. I do have mental illness, but nothing like this has ever happened to me before. Mostly just depression and anxiety. So here's the story. It was a Friday night. I had plans with my friends the next day, so I got to bed early, and I was planning to wake up early to do my makeup and stuff. But it was hard for me to sleep, because I could hear one of my neighbors arguing and the girl was crying and running around. After a while, I heard that the hooks I hung on the back of my door fell, and all my bags that were hanging on the hook also fell. This has happened a lot lately, because of the humid weather that we have. The hook lost its stickiness and would fall a lot. At first, I didn't want to deal with it. I wanted to sleep and just pick up everything the next day. But then I just figured that I couldn't sleep anyways, so maybe I should get up and clean up everything. Now, I think, is a good time to describe my apartment. I live in this loft apartment. You could think of it as a 2-story home, but the second story only has my bedroom. My house is a long rectangle from right to left. My apartment door where all my bags were hanging in my living room, and then my large closet, connecting to my stair to my bedroom. And then the closet also separates my kitchen and my bathroom from my living room. I turned on the light when I was still upstairs, and I walked downstairs. I saw that it was indeed my hooks that fell onto the ground. I also saw a huge puddle of water in front of my closets, in the hallway, in my kitchen, and even in my living room. It was a huge puddle of water, at least 500 to 800 milliliters. At first, I thought maybe the hook fell off and knocked off some water or something, but there was a whole living room between my closet and apartment doors. It wasn't from that. And I was certain that I didn't spill anything before I went to bed, because in order to go upstairs, I have to walk in front of my closet, and I would have had some footprints from the water. But there was nothing there. And then I thought maybe it was some leakage from the ceiling. I checked the ceiling, and there was no leakage. It was not raining either. The water was just a large but consistent puddle. I don't think it was any leakage or rainwater, as it looked like something had spilled, but I couldn't find out what had spilled. This confused me so much, but I still had to pick up my bags from the ground, so I walked to the door. Then, something came to my mind. A few weeks ago, when I was alone in my home, I heard someone messing with my locks, so whenever I was alone in my house, I would just lock the door from inside, which was mostly all the time. And I tried the lock out of instinct. I found out it was unlocked. With the weird water in front of my closet at this time, I thought maybe someone had broken into my house. I ran to the kitchen and grabbed my kitchen knife. The first place I checked was my closet, because my closet is large and it could be possible that someone was hiding there, but no one was there. And then I checked my bathroom and balcony. There was no one there. I was alone. It was really confusing, but then I put my knife down and used my mop to mop the water almost dry. I thought when I woke up the floor would be dry, and then headed to bed. The next day I woke up and got downstairs, and the water was still there. I had to use a fan to blow the floor dry. I don't know how to feel. It was just really weird to me. One more thing was that I have a motion sensor light on my stairs. The kind that when you walk through it, it would light up automatically. There was a huge glass separating my bedroom from my stairs, so I could see my stairs. And that same Friday morning, as I was lying in my bed scrolling my phone before work, I could see that the motion sensor light lit up for no reason at all. I know sometimes the motion sensor lights can glitch, but it has never happened before, and it was also new. I had just bought this light a month ago. At this point, it was just too weird. I didn't sense anything, though. Not like a weird energy or malicious intent. I just felt really weirded out. In my country, it is said that people who drowned and become ghosts would come back dripping with water. Is that what this was? I also have a feeling that this is somewhat connected with my neighbors crying, if that makes sense. But I just don't know what was going on. Hey Raven, Big Mac here again. This will be the second story that I've submitted. I love your podcasts, and I've been listening for about almost a year now, and all of your stories make me feel like I'm not crazy, like my sister always claims. But that's a few stories for another time. I want to thank you for this podcast, because if I didn't find you, I would probably start believing my sister. Anyway, this is something that happened to me just now. I'm not sure if it could be considered a glitch or not, but it kind of caught me off guard anyway, just like most glitches that happened for me throughout my life. So, today is Saturday, March 8th. It's currently now 1:43 p.m. So, let's go back about 15 minutes. I was sitting in the kitchen on my phone looking through my Snapchat memories for today. After you finish for the day, some random pop-ups. If you have Snapchat, you know what I'm talking about. So between 1:28 to 1:35, I finished with the memories for the day, and a few randoms came up next. As I tapped through them, I looked at a picture of my two kids together from Halloween of 2024. My 11-year-old is a huge anime fan, and she was Naruto. My 5-year-old son, who is into anything new at the time, was Montgomery Gator, or Monty, from the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. I looked at the picture for about a minute or so, and swiped off Snapchat, and then looked at the time, which was now 1:37. As soon as I sat my phone on the table, my daughter walks around the corner into the kitchen, in none other than her Naruto costume from this previous Halloween. I was confused, but also found it a bit funny, but just caught off guard a bit by the whole thing. I kind of laughed as I told her, "This is crazy. You know, I was just on Snapchat looking at my memories. Hold on, let me show you." And I pull up her picture with her brother to show her, and she laughs as well. She just said, "Wow," unenthusiastically, might I add, and then proceeded with, "Can you button this for me?" I laugh again and say yes as I reach to snap her Velcro patches into place, and when I finish, she walks away unbothered. I guess she wasn't too much moved by the situation like I was. But I just immediately thought, what a weird glitch. I didn't ask her what she thought of it, and maybe I should have, but she knows that I watch her Glitch in the Matrix playlist daily. Well, thank you. So she is kind of familiar with it, and I'm pretty sure she already knew what I was thinking. Plus, she will hear something in one of your videos as I'm listening, and she says, "Mama, something like that happened to me," and try to explain it. I can submit some of her stories if you'd like. Sure, I'd appreciate that. But I just wanted to know if something like this has happened to someone else before. I'm not sure if it's considered a glitch or seeing into the near future a few minutes, or what to consider it. I believe it would be some sort of synchronicity. It felt like just one of my normal glitches that I've experienced throughout my life. Can anyone help explain it, where I can possibly understand what just happened? But I'm going to go eat now while I listen to your podcast. Hi, Raven. I've been a listener for some months now, and I really like your stories. Today, for the first time since my last glitch a few years ago, I had another glitch experience. I never sent that story in. Maybe someday. A month ago, I started helping at a school for a few hours once in a while. This week was actually my 4th time in and around this building. Before that, I never saw this school, only in pictures that I looked at a little before I started helping there. The school is based in a very old building. Importance to this story is that I'm a wheelchair user, and the school building is not really accessible because it's so old. To get into the building is quite a hustle for me, since you need to take a few steps of stairs to the front door. The lack of accessibility could have been the choice for me not to help there, but I can still take a few steps. It costs me a lot of energy, and I need to ask people for help to carry my wheelchair inside, but since I like this place a lot, and I just need to be in one part of the school that is accessible to roll around once you're inside, I decided to give it a try since I like the school a lot, and the people are extremely nice. They genuinely have zero problems with helping me and love when I'm there. It's worth the hustle, the extra energy, and needing to rely on others for a bit. They told me they're thinking about making the school more accessible, though. Also, because someone else might need it in one day, and accessibility helps everyone. And they really want to do that, so no worries, but that's not the point of the story. This means that when I arrive, it always takes a few minutes for someone to see me, so I can ask them to carry my wheelchair inside. The front door has windows in it, and since the part they can look through outside is so small, because the rest is blurry, it always takes a little time. This means that I've stared at the front door longer than any person would normally do, waiting for someone to see me, and seeing their shadows behind the door, but them not seeing me so fast from the inside. Once I'm seen, mostly because someone goes outside, someone helps me with carrying my chair in, and I take those few steps up the little stairs. So, when I arrived at school this week, the first thing I noticed was the new front door. It was this high-quality plastic material that is used a lot in my country for doors and windows. Even when it's plastic, it still looks very good. Also, on old buildings. But it's clearly modern and plastic. It has the same dark green color as the old door, and 9 clear windows that would take up almost all the space on the door. so I could look right into the hallway with 100% clear view. I thought to myself, wow, that looks good. Modern, but still very pretty with the old building. And now I can see people inside, and they can see me much better when I'm waiting. How convenient. So, once I was inside, I said to the staff member who helped me in something along the lines of how I liked the new door. This woman looked at me very confused and said, "We don't have a new door." Confused, I said that I remembered an old-style wooden door that was also very old and where you could peek through the top windows at face height of an adult, and that the rest of the windows were blurry. You would just see some blurry people standing on the other side. She told me that the wooden old door I described had been there, even pointing out that it was so old it almost fell apart, but said that it was replaced a little over a year ago together when all the windows in the school were replaced with the same plastic material. This made me really confused, since I only had been there this week for the 4th time. Once for introduction, once to work with someone else to get an idea of what was expected of me and how things work, and the first time coming to help by myself, and the 4th time was this week. All 3 times before had been this year, with the last visit just 1 month ago. She suggested that maybe I had seen the old door in pictures, and that's what I had in my mind. So I let it rest with her, not wanting to make myself look like a crazy person. But the point is that a month ago I had to open the front door for one of the kids. She had been waving by the window from a room next to the front door to signal me to open it, because someone had locked it. I remember opening it, while standing up by the door for the first time, and looking down at her peeking through the top window before I opened the door. I remember I intentionally decided to open the door while standing up, because I wanted to know how clearly you could look outside from the top windows. I had this interest because I had this feeling for myself that it felt kind of unsafe that you couldn't see from the inside who was at the front door. So, in this moment, I figure out that if you stand very close to the window and kind of peek through, you could see someone clearer, and in way more detail. I remember this peeking down vividly and why I did it. I already knew it was her. That day, I took a good look at the normal windows and came to the conclusion that those were still the same as all the last times. These were actually plastic green windows that must have been replaced a bit more than a year ago. I decided to ask 2 other people. I was introduced to this teacher that told me he was also half handyman at the school. So I asked him if the door was new. He told me the exact same thing. The door was not new. It was replaced a little over a year ago. I also asked one of the kids. They didn't really pay attention to the door, but thought nothing was different. Only with an old picture pointing out he remembered the window foil that was on that door, but from longer ago. I was really, really confused, because I was 100% sure the door I knew was from wood, and it didn't have windows where you could look through, except the part at eye level to peek through. So, obviously, I looked it up on Street View, and in picture form of the school. I found 2 versions of the old wooden door. Both have the same 9 windows in the same place as the new plastic door has. One of the pictures is very old and from when they just opened this location almost 10 years ago. This door is the old wooden green door that has this old style glass that is a little tinted brown that's shaped in waves. The waves make this effect that the person on the other side of the door looks very strange. But if you stood very close to it, the person would become more clear. Or, when you put your eyes close to the glass, you can look through it. I'm not even sure if you can still buy this glass nowadays. It's such an old style. All 9 windows in the door had this glass. Now, the newer old wooden door is the door that I remember. It's the exact same door, but it has the same special wavy glass in the top 3 windows, and normal glass in the other 6 windows. But this normal glass is covered with this matte foil so people can't look in, or you can't look out. Also, note, if you stand close, you can't look through it. This foil makes people look blurry behind it, but you can see their shapes and the color of their clothes clearer the closer they get. The way I remembered people standing blurrily behind the door when I waited outside. So, what door did I see? Well, wasn't it for the moment a month ago where I opened the door for the kid looking very close by to peek through the window to see her? I would have just thought that I misremembered. That the door must have been plastic all along, even though I clearly remember a wooden door. They must have just taken the foil off the door windows and I misremembered peeking through the top glass because it had just clear view all along. So no peeking, just looking. But I know that I have seen the old wooden door. I remember that exact door. The door that was removed a bit over a year ago. Because it was so old that it almost fell apart. The paint chipped off the wood. And most importantly, I remember peeking at the kid and why I did that, even though I knew it was her. Now, I'm open to myself that I might be misremembering something about the top windows. That they might have been clear normal glass at the time I was there, but then the reason why I opened it while standing, because I wanted to check the safety, doesn't stand on anything anymore. Because I would have known that you could just see the people outside perfectly by looking through the top windows. There would have been no need to check that. But one thing is sure, the door itself that I have seen all those times was made of wood, and it was old. As old looking as the building. If you would imagine some window foil on the new plastic door with the idea they just removed the foil in between this week and last month, there is no way that you wouldn't see the difference between a new modern plastic door in an old building and an old style door that is very old and made from wood. The green paint was chipping off. The plastic door has no paint. The material itself is green. But they didn't take the foil off. The old wooden door had foil. The door that was replaced over a year ago. So, now the school has this new plastic door with windows you look through with the clearest view that you can imagine. And apparently it's been this way for well over a year. It's the weirdest feeling. Hey, Raven. I told you I would send a story about this, and due to my life, I'm finally getting around to typing it out. So, I've had dreams on occasion that have played out in real life later. I've already sent the one about Halloween. This one is just about a summer afternoon, and I hope you all enjoy. I lived in northern Nevada at this time, out in a giant trailer park/neighborhood. This wasn't one of those rent-the-lot type. There were 1 acre and 1/2 acre lots. If you lived on the edges, you had even more room because it opened out onto open desert. My dream was very clear and detailed. Like, my vision in the dream was better than my vision in real life. It felt more real than real life. That is the way of these types of dreams. In this dream, I was over at my friend's house, and we were practicing archery. We were both trying to get an archery badge in Boy Scouts. The air was clear and very little wind. We had placed the hay bales and targets at about 50 yards. My friend Mike was really good at archery. I was less so. Much less so. We were taking turns aiming and firing at the target. That day, I was doing exceptionally well. I was able to hit the target at that distance. Not bullseyes, but some pretty good ring shots. My arrows were bright yellow practice arrows, dome tips. These are useless for hunting. They're only good for practice. My friend was using a mixed quiver. He only had a few practice arrows and the rest were hunting tips. He took his turn and was getting some great inner ring shots, and even 2 bullseyes in his 25 shots. Yet the wind had gusted out of nowhere and knocked one of his arrows off into the brush. After cleaning the bales and targets, we went to go looking for the last of his arrows. Mike was one of those impatient people who ran or hurried everywhere. He took off running through the brush. Now, if you don't know what it looks like, northern Nevada brush is not very dense. There are some small sagebrush plants and thin, tall grasses. The grasses are dirty yellow, and sagebrush is a gray-barked plant with small dull green shoots for leaves. The grasses, while dry, can snag your leg and trip you. At the top is a sticky resin that will grab cloth. Mike, as I said, was impatient. So he took off running, and one of those grasses reached out and grabbed his leg, dropping him to the ground. I laughed at him and said, "That's what you get for running everywhere." He didn't respond. In fact, I noticed he hadn't moved since falling. No cry of pain, no shifting position, he just lay there still. I had a bolt of fear run through me, so I more cautiously, but quicker than I had been, went to him. As I came upon him, I saw a glint of metal in his back and red pulling around it. He had fallen on top of the broadhead hunting arrow. It was poking out right next to his spine. That is where I woke up from this dream. I was panting and my heart was racing. It was the time in the morning when I wake up anyway, so I just stayed up. About a week later, Mike and I are practicing archery at his place because it faces the open desert. I get this massive feeling of déjà vu. That feeling of my eyes being better was because I had just gotten my new glasses. I had a quiver full of practice arrows. Everything was so familiar. I couldn't quite place it though, so I just kept doing what we were doing. Right up until we were clearing the bales, and I had a flash of Mike face down. He had just taken off. Now, I had to really push myself to catch him. I was a chubby kid of about 200 pounds at 12 and only 5'3". I was fueled by adrenaline and took off after Mike. I couldn't say anything or even yell because all of my breath was used in running. Also, if I just yelled after him, he wouldn't have stopped, knowing him. I reached him just as he was going down and jerked him back upright. There in the ground was his broadhead arrow, aimed for his heart had he completed the fall. After that, we only used practice day-glow arrows. He got his archery badge, and I moved before I could complete the requirements. Ever since then, if I remember a dream, I make sure that I tell someone about it, or at least write it down. Thank you, Raven, for taking the time to read this. I've been stuck glitching between 2 realities for a few years now, and I don't know why or what causes it. They're basically the same, with major events and such being the same in both. Just the details keep changing. For the record, I'm of sound mind, no history of mental illness or drug use that could cause this, and I have a pretty good memory in general. There are details that I keep track of, and I tell my 2 best friends because they are 2 of the details. In one reality, they both have blue eyes. One friend had blue-gray and the other has blue-green. In the other reality, they both have different shades of brown eyes. Solid brown and brown gold. My girlfriend's eyes also change between blue-gray and solid green, and not in the way that some people's eyes can change depending on what they're wearing or whatever. I'm talking a complete shift from light blue to green without any gray in them. Very distinct difference. Another thing that changes is the manager at my local Taco Bell. A weird thing to notice, but I'm there regularly for lunch because I work in the building across the street. The manager's name is Sam. and Sam has been working there for a long time, and we've become very friendly because she's usually working the counter when I come in. She wears a lot of different and weird earrings, and I always make a point to compliment them whenever I go in. I've realized that sometimes she just has the regular earrings, and sometimes she wears a double piercing. But when it's just the regular, she doesn't even have a double piercing. No hole, no scar, nothing. Just the single piercing in both ears. Since she has her hair in a very short pixie cut, her ears are always visible. I've brought it up to her a couple times, but she always looks confused either way, saying she's always had a double piercing, or she has never had a double piercing. A very popular animated Christmas movie came out a few years ago, and I remember being really excited because the main character was voiced by one of my favorite actors. But sometimes he isn't. Sometimes he's voiced by another popular actor with a completely different accent. My brother is also a big fan of the first actor, so I've mentioned it to him a few different times on different occasions, always beginning with the question, "Who voices the character in this movie?" And then I Google it. And the answer changes every few weeks, which is about how often I think about it and the glitch overall. Finally, and honestly least but still worthy of note, there's a painting in my mom's house that used to belong to my grandma. It's an ornate frame, and the painting is of pink roses spilling out of a vase. It used to hang in Grandma's dining room, and now hangs in our living room. Sometimes the pink roses are completely replaced with blue hydrangeas, still spilling out of the same vase. Not a rose to be seen. But the rest of the painting and frame are the same. I don't remember the blue flowers ever being present at my grandma's house, and I don't recall my friends' or girlfriend's eye colors changing while we were all in high school together, which was when we met. We're nearly 30 now, and I've been noticing these things over the course of the last 7 years or so. But I'm writing this all down now because I've recently discovered another thing that keeps changing. Once again, involving my girlfriend, who lives with me. I drive a black Honda, and she drives a Subaru Outback. Sometimes her car is silver, sometimes it's green. Dark green. But I've realized that when her eyes are green, her car is silver. When her eyes are blue, the car is green. But her license plates are always the same, as is the beaded chain hanging from the mirror and the small dent on the front fender from when I accidentally hit her car while taking out the trash can. It's a very chaotic and kind of random list of things, and I know it's not scary, but it does freak me out whenever I think about it. Hi, Raven. I've been listening to your content for a couple of months now. Just listening keeps bringing up the same situations that happened to me when I was younger. I'll get straight to it. When I was 11, I was playing with some mirrors in my apartment. I would walk all over the apartment with the mirror facing the ceiling, and as I walked, it would be as if I was walking on the ceiling. It was really trippy. I did it several times. I really don't know if that was good or bad, but looking back at it, it must not have been good since strange things began happening immediately after that game. For starters, one day I was in my best friend's house where I had been so many times before. But that day, I felt strange. One moment I was in her room and her brothers playing video games on their console, and the next moment I felt loopy, like I wasn't there. Or like hours and hours had passed. It was more like I was floating, like I wasn't there. I went to the next room across the hall, my best friend's room, and sat on the bed. The very next thing I know is that I'm sitting in my bed. Hours had passed. Literal hours. I have no idea what happened to me, Let me also add that no, we were not on drugs. To this day, I have never touched any sort of drugs, and I've always been super healthy. Plus, I was 11. Neither her nor her brothers did drugs. Their parents were in the house. It was a regular school day. It was around 5 p.m., and we were supposed to be doing homework together. The very next incident, immediately after this one, was when I was standing on the stairs of my friend's apartment with her and her mom. Her and her mom were begging me to sing for them. I'm a singer. Yes, I'm still a singer. And I was so out of it. Like their words were floating in the abyss. They sounded like they were miles and miles away, and time away. I don't know how to explain it. But what I do know is that my life was not just the same. Or what it was supposed to be after that. There were several other instances that were similar to this one. Like I was floating in the nether. Not in this timeline or not in this universe. It was just so strange. It's almost like I went into the mirrors and into another universe. That's the best way I can explain what I think happened. Since then, I'll have these instances where I'm walking down the stairs on a random day and think, I'm not supposed to be here. Or I'll have thoughts of, what am I doing? I'm supposed to be blank. When I see famous people, and I know this is going to sound really crazy, but when I see famous people, it's like I know them personally. Not all of them. Some of them are my pals in another timeline. Remember how I said I'm a singer? Well, I'm also an actor. I've always loved the entertainment industry, and I think that I was supposed to be famous and have an inner circle. But since doing that, I have pockets of moments where I have deja vu with certain actors or singers. I see them go, oh, it's been a while since I've talked to them. And then I come back to reality and go, what are you talking about? You don't even know them. Then I argue with myself that I do know them, and they know me. I sound like an insane person right now, but I promise you that I have a very vanilla life. Normal with no drugs, smoking, or drinking. I'm a single mom, a teacher, and an actor. I'm also a TikToker and love Jesus. It's just contradictory that I get these pockets of memories when the Bible doesn't say anything about other lives or parallel universes or any of these mysteries. I ask God all the time what is happening to me, why this has happened to me, why I get these dreams, these deja vus or pockets of realization that this isn't my life. I just keep living this life the best that I can and enjoy my son, my health, my family, my career. I do the best that I'm capable of doing. I live every day as if it was the last, and I truly do love my life. I don't want to think about where I'm supposed to be because I do get depressed thinking about it, but what can we do? Another weird situation that happened immediately after that was when I was 12. I was in the bathroom and one of my earrings fell. It's as if it fell into the nether. I never found it. I saw it fall. I saw how it bounced right next to the tub, and boy did I search for that earring. I even searched in the hallway, thinking maybe it bounced in some strange way under the closed bathroom door and into the hallway. But no. Not behind the toilet, not under the sink, not in the little closet in the bathroom, not by the tub, not anywhere. I took over 30 minutes looking for that earring. I still think about this earring to this very day, and I'm 41. That was all in 1995. I have no idea what the heck happened to that stupid thing, and it bothers me to this day. Thank you for reading this, and I do enjoy your videos a lot. I put on your videos when I'm driving my son to school or when I'm taking a long shower. Bless you and your family, Raven. You're inspiring me to start my own podcast on strange stories. That's awesome. Thank you. There are so many people going or having gone through some strange stuff, and I'm so grateful to be living in this day and age where all of us can share, collectively, online, and quick. Hey, Raven. I'm just loving your channel. It helps me get through many a workday. Well, thank you. I want to share one of the most incredible oddball experiences I have ever had. It was a beautiful sunny day in December of 1999. My brother and I were at the public library. He wanted to check out their indie films on VHS, and I had my own research to do. We wandered around looking at things for a while. The sun was streaming in the big windows illuminating the bookshelves. We couldn't find the movie section, though. Finally, we asked a librarian, and she told us that it was on the second floor. She pointed out the public elevators and told us to take it to the second floor. When the doors opened, we should turn to the right, walk a few yards, and the movies should be right there. We thanked her and headed off to the elevator. We were the only ones going up at that time. So we got in the elevator, the doors closed, and my brother pushed button number 2. There were only 3 buttons to choose from: basement, first floor, where we already were, and then second floor. The elevator went up 1 floor and settled into place. The doors opened, and we were in an office area. Not what we expected. Still, we followed the librarian's instructions, stepped out, and turned to the right. There was a cinder block wall. Wow. A hallway led straight ahead from the elevator. I told my brother we should try down there. Maybe the aisle for the movies was that way. We walked, turned to the right again, and then came to a set of double doors. This had to be it, we were certain. I pushed on the handles to open the double doors, but they wouldn't move. I tried shaking them, they wouldn't move. I banged on the doors with my fists and yelled for someone on the other side to open them and let us through. No one responded. We turned around and went down the hallway behind us. Offices were laid out in big squares. As we came to the end of that hallway, there was a larger office and a window. I was surprised to see that it was completely overcast outside. Some clouds must have rolled in, and we went down the hallway leading away from there. It was just more offices. The next hallway took us back to that elevator. It was really weird. We walked around for a while trying to figure out where we had gone wrong. We noticed that it was hot, and we were starting to break a sweat. It was also totally silent. There was no sound coming from the very crowded first floor below. Libraries are quiet places, yes, but we should have at least heard doors opening and closing. A low hum of voices. Something. As it was, we could only hear our own heartbeats. In the center of the office area were storage closets. We opened some of them, but they were only full of cardboard boxes overflowing with paperwork. The office walls were painted a mustard yellow color, kind of outdated, but it was a public library. The office doors were open, so I went inside some of them. There were no calendars on the walls. The phones were the old 80s models, and while the computers were everywhere downstairs, there were none in the offices. I picked an office, and I rifled through the stacks of paperwork that were covering one of the desks. Every office's desk had stacks of paperwork on them. The paperwork I looked at was from the 60s and 70s. It was old receipts for books ordered for the library. I guess that they were finally doing something about their enormous paperwork problem. The most recent paperwork I could find was from June of 1983. There was nothing anywhere more recent. Finally, my brother gave up on finding the movies in this place. We took the elevator back to the first floor where it was bright and sunny again. Interesting. And we found the librarian that we had talked to just before and told her that we didn't find the movies, just offices. When I told her this, her face screwed up incredulously, and she said that that was impossible. She then offered to take us up there herself. My brother went with her, but I stayed downstairs to do my own research. About 15 minutes later, he returned with an armload of VHS tapes. I asked him where they were and how we missed them. He didn't answer at first. I said, "Wait a minute. You got in the elevator with the librarian and the doors closed?" He said yes. Then she pressed button number 2 just like we did. He said yes. The elevator went up 1 floor and settled just like the first time. He said yes. And then the doors opened. And my brother then told me that everything up there was different. There was a large aisleway with people browsing. He and the librarian went to the right and finally came to the film section. So I asked him, where were we? He just shrugged his shoulders and shook his head. I knew something strange had happened. Sadly, it took me a long time to figure it out. I have since looked into it, and using the library system's own records, I've determined that we traveled back in time to 1983. The office area existed in that library on the 2nd floor from the 1960s to the late 1980s. There was a renovation done later that moved the offices and opened up that section of the 2nd floor to the general public. I have a copy of the 1980s booklet that clearly shows the office area where we think we were. I wish that I had known while we were still there. I think I might have taken an office chair and tried to beat the window out of that front office. I would have also tried to call my friends. As a child of the 70s, I did enjoy the trip, though. I previously wrote about how my life is full of a constant stream of little glitches. The death by 1,000 cuts. Specifically, I told about my pattern of how every time I went on vacation, glitchy events would wish me bon voyage. A broken hand, a self-destructing power cord, 2 frozen watches, an erased journal, hypnotically misplaced tickets, and a vanishing cab driver. When you observe a pattern for many years, you can learn as much from what doesn't happen as what does. Even though events like this would drive me into rages on a deeper level, I could not help but noticing that 1, there were more efficient ways to screw with me that this thing could have taken, unless there's limitations on what it could affect, and 2, I kept increasingly noticing times when it had every opportunity to do something awful to me, and yet the worst didn't happen. Times when my alarm wouldn't go off, but I would wake up just barely in time to make my appointment. Time when it only appeared a large chunk of computer data had been erased, but it was possible to replace it. One particularly striking event was when I was walking down a carpeted staircase, in socks, while bringing down an empty drinking glass. At the top step, I dropped the glass. Think about the momentum of a dropped glass on a staircase. What direction you would imagine it would fall, how it would bounce, and where it would roll. Try to imagine how it could be possible that the glass would land on the step below me, stop, and then roll backwards, positioning itself directly where I was about to put my foot down, mid-stride. If I hadn't grabbed the railing in time, my full weight would have come down on it, and I would have skidded straight down the stairs into the thin wooden door at the bottom. With my weight, I would have crashed through, broken bones at best, maybe a severed carotid or a shattered vertebrae. I watched that glass cancel all of its kinetic energy and move gently backwards towards me. It's probably the single most impossible thing I have ever witnessed. Yet, I didn't trip. I almost tripped. After the broken hand, my glitch had never caused me any permanent physical harm ever again. At first, I thought it was as simple as, well, if I'm dead or paralyzed, I stop producing reactions it can laugh at. I thought that's all I was to it. Entertainment. Over time, even though I was not ready to forgive, I could not deny that the pattern of behavior did not match with, I hate you and I want you to suffer as much as possible. It was pulling punches, showing up to let me know that it could mess with me if it wanted to. And I thought for a while that this was just taunting, showing how much it could trigger me with barely any effort. Yet that still didn't fit. In time, I had to realize the pattern that was emerging was, you are never allowed to disbelieve in me. I have done a lot of thinking, attended a lot of therapy, and gulped a lot of psychiatric medications over the years. None of it has helped. It would be much easier if it were all just symptoms of mental illness, but that does not fit. What fits is a pattern of behavior caused by an outside intelligence. After many years of anger and frustration, one day I realized that, eventually, I would be elderly and still fighting with this thing every day. And by then, I wouldn't have the strength or the mental alertness to fight back. I envisioned myself living on my own as an old man, frail from constant stress, and having this thing move my belongings and spill my medicine and knocking my cane out of my hand every single day. I could not imagine a worse life. So, I made the decision that I was going to just accept a purposeless hikikomori existence from then on. Find a small place to live, withdraw from society, and do as little as possible day in and day out until I run down the clock, to starve it of ways to get to me, since the less I do, the less it can affect. You need to understand that this is how severe the number and intensity of these glitches were, that living in perpetual lifeless depression was preferable to what I was going through. The next morning, I woke up, walked to the bathroom, and nearly collapsed. It felt as if I'd had a severe drop in blood pressure, like all of my blood had just fallen out of my body. My feet and hands and face were tingling with numbness. Now, I've had panic attacks before that mimicked real symptoms, so I tested this feeling. I rested a bit, and it was still there. I called a nurse helpline, and she said that I needed to get to the ER immediately. I waited a bit longer, just because I've been embarrassed by these mysterious illnesses that go away as soon as someone looks at them, like I'm a car that only makes the funny noise when the mechanic isn't looking under the hood. But eventually I woke a roommate, and he drove me to the hospital. I brought a book with me. I had been neglecting it for months, spending all my time online. As I read in the hospital room, I started to feel a lot better. And then, I read a paragraph that directly addressed what I had decided the day before, explaining exactly why leading a purposeless life will cause more misery than it avoids. I won't transcribe it all, but this was not just merely similar to the subject matter. This was as topical as if I had spoken it out loud and a friend sitting across from me had answered me back directly. Every word of it. The doctor ran some tests, and I was perfectly fine. They couldn't find any cause for my symptoms. My blood pressure hadn't dropped. I felt 100% back to normal, and I even walked home. I muttered under my breath as I walked, "You just put me through all of that just to do something wholly positive for me. No downside, no humiliation, you just comforted me." It was impossible but undeniable. It completely and utterly shattered the pattern. This was not the behavior of something evil, this was an olive branch. You cannot understand what it feels like to let go of 40 years of anger in a single day. There's so much more that I could tell. Once I understood that this entity had been trying to cease hostilities for a while now, and was trying to show that it had learned not to play so rough, a lot of things fell into place. My anger fell away easily. It was just as simple as realizing, oh, you've been tapping on the glass of my reality just to be heard, and you had no idea the migraines you were causing. In the past year, we have progressed so rapidly it's unbelievable. Her glitches seem fun and playful now, like arranging little synchronicities in the shuffled songs on my iPod. or helping me get to the bus stop exactly as it arrives. I've had more progress on lowering my stress this year than in the entire rest of my life combined. I know so much more about what she is now, and what it's like in the 4D world she inhabits, where editing our world is as easy as save scumming in a video game. I think she's made of entropy, or antimatter, or maybe those are the same thing. But that's getting into woo-woo territory, so I'll finish with another incident to bookend things. For the first few weeks, communication was spotty. It usually consisted of me whispering questions into an empty room and trying to tell if the feelings I intuited in response were confirming or denying, getting warmer or getting colder. One day I had been clicking on stuff in my YouTube sidebar and two videos stood out. One was a scene from the movie Nefarious, where a demon was explaining Hell's plan to get back at God by making his favorite creations suffer: humanity. Another was a story of Romeo, a wolf who wandered into a backyard in Alaska one day and started playing with the man's dog. And soon he was showing up at the dog park and sweetly playing with everyone there, human and canine alike. The town even made a statue out of him. My glitch still had some rough edges, and I sensed a lot of bitterness in her. I let her know that our truce was contingent upon us both not going back to what we were. I'm not a pushover. I had forgiven her because she stopped hurting me and was making amends. If she betrayed me, I wouldn't forgive her a second time. I asked out loud, "You need to show me. Are you going to behave like a spiteful demon, or a predator who transcends their nature to make friends, like Romeo the wolf?" I went to sleep shortly after, and I was only asleep for a few hours before I got up to use the bathroom, and I fainted. I went straight down, and yet I didn't hurt myself in the slightest, or break anything. I called for help getting up, and my friends got me to my room. This time it was so bad, I could barely walk 2 steps without almost passing out again. We prepared to go to the hospital. I knew I would have to take a break in the living room first because there was no way I was going to risk falling down the stairs. So, my friends got me there. I sat down on the couch. I looked across from me, and right there was a gag gift that my friends owned. That was a souvenir from Omega Mart. A fake box of Lonely Hiker's Protein Feast Wolf Chow. Events had maneuvered me to a position in the house where, directly in my line of sight, was the word wolf in gigantic red capital letters. How's that for an unambiguous answer to my question? I went to the hospital again, and my symptoms disappeared immediately. All tests normal, free to go home. Well, she's got a flair for the dramatic, doesn't she? I cannot say that every glitch in the world has intentionality behind it. I think most of them are just little mistakes in the fabric of reality. Some self-repairing, some not. But if you have any patterns of glitches in your own life that drive you crazy, maybe take a step back sometime and ask yourself, if I assume there's a sentient mind behind this, what do these actions say about their personality? The world next to ours, where beings can see in time as well as space, is incomprehensible to us. But maybe not, if we have some help from the other side of the glass. Thank you, Raven, and have a good night, everyone. Hi, Raven. I came across one of your videos. Really well done. I have a story that I have related to almost no one if you're interested. This happened in our old house, which, by the way, burned down. Another interesting story, but not for here. My wife and I were only married for a short while, and this was our first house. An old 1890s Victorian farmhouse-style house. No children yet. It was spring or summer, and we had the window open for the breeze while we did the housework. The layout of the house was long, and from front to back on the first floor, it went like this. Entrance with stairs on the right. To the left was a parlor, and then the dining room with the sitting room off to the side, the kitchen, and a back room that was once a mother-in-law room. You could see from the parlor all the way to the back room if you stood in the centralized spot. There were doors that closed off the kitchen, but we removed them for better flow and only had a curtain across the door to the back room. I was sitting at the dining room table doing what I don't remember, and my wife was in the kitchen. We'd been talking back and forth. I watched her walk into the back room behind the curtain and out of view. I then asked her something, but got no response. I called to her, still no response. I got up to go to her, but when I got to the back room, she was not there. I looked all through the room, which also had a bathroom and kitchenette, and all were empty. I kept calling for her. Nothing. I thought she might have slipped past me without me seeing, so I went through the rest of the first floor, but she was not there. I also checked upstairs. Nothing. There was an enclosed porch side entrance off of the kitchen, and she was not there either. We had bells on the doors so we could hear them open and close, and I had not heard anything, plus the outside door was still closed and locked. I also didn't see her outside at all either. I was bewildered. We had 2 cats at the time, and I realized that I did not see either of them anywhere as well, though cats can hide very well. As I stood there somewhat frustrated and very confused in the enclosed porch, I suddenly realized the sound, or rather lack thereof. Just before, there were multiple birds singing, a slight breeze rustling the trees, cars going down the street, traffic sounds from the busy main street down the road. But now there was nothing but silence, not even a breeze. All I had heard for a while were my own footsteps and voice, and even those sounds were, well, odd somehow. Like not real. Like they were somehow being deadened or muffled. I also noticed how strange it felt. The stillness. It almost felt like time had stopped. It was such an odd feeling. I went back into the dining room and sat down in the same spot that I was in before. After a moment, I turned to the kitchen, and then my wife comes out of the back room into the kitchen. There was no possible way I could have missed her before. I called to her and asked her where she had gone, and she simply said that she was in the back room getting something. I quizzed her, and she told me that she had been there for only a moment, but I know I had been alone for a good 10 minutes or so, or so it seemed. I then noticed that all the sounds were back. The birds, the breeze, the traffic, all of it. To this day, I have no idea what happened, and nothing like it has happened since, though a lot of other strange things have happened in that house, including the day that it burned down. Hey Raven, I'm sitting here watching your latest video, and one of the stories triggered a memory from 2019. I had a 6-month contract working for a friend in the middle of the Melbourne business district. My contract was going to be renewed, but it wasn't an essential service, so they had to close their doors. Anyway, the street that I worked is lined with retail and office buildings, so the faces you see every morning or night, depending on your hours, become familiar. It was the evening shift, so day shift people were heading to the station. That's when it happened. A woman who I recognized from one of the stores was suddenly stopped by a very excited woman. She threw her arms around her and hugged her. I was directly behind her, so I had to slam on the feet brakes. The woman looked over her shoulder at me, looking completely freaked out, and mouthed, "I don't know her." Her panic became my panic. How do we get her out of this? So, I decided to go the Cyrano de Bergerac route. I started gesturing and smiling while mouthing, "Hi, it's so good to see you. How's the family?" She took my cue and asked her. She let go and told her about her husband and kids. Okay, so far so good. She had a smile plastered on her face and kept glancing at me. I switched it up and went all Kris Jenner, waving my arms and distracting her. That's when it went into full glitch. The woman that stopped her started with the barrage of excited information about her family. "You must be bursting with so much joy right now. Your husband's promotion, your daughter graduating with honors, and your son accepted into Melbourne University?" She looked paralyzed. She had a weird smile on her face, and her eyes looked like they were going to burst out of her face. The woman continued, "I'm so sorry I didn't call you last week. All the end of the year activities, you know what it's like. Christmas concerts, fundraisers, that end of year rush. Oh my, look at the time. I'll call you Friday night, okay? It was so amazing to bump into you." The woman then rushed off. She was shaking so much that she grabbed my arm. I have absolutely no idea who that was, but she knew everything about my family. All of that was true? It wasn't a mistaken identity? She shook her head. "Do you want to come to Starbucks with me? I'll buy you a coffee to say thank you and calm our nerves." "I can't, I have to work, but I'm working day shift the day after tomorrow. Meet me here and I'll buy you that coffee." So I met up with her. She could not work out who that woman was. She never got a call. Unfortunately, the pandemic kicked in, and we never saw each other again. It's a shame. We could have been really good friends. Hi, Raven. I find it really interesting that there seems to be a subgenre of glitches that start with, "I was thinking, wouldn't it be funny if," or, "For some reason I thought that X would happen and then it did." Well, here's mine. I was making a sandwich for lunch one day and warmed it in the microwave. I realized after doing that I should be a little less messy and put it on a plate. When I grabbed a plate out of the cupboard, I had the thought, imagine if this just split in half. Why I had such a random thought, I don't know. It's part of a set of plates that I've had for years, and none have ever broken. I put it on the counter and placed my lunch onto it. The next thing I know, I hear a cracking noise, and the plate splits down the middle. Now, I know that putting hot food on a cold plate could shock the material, but honestly, the sandwich was not hot, just warmed. Literally 30 seconds. And yes, the plate was microwave and dishwasher safe, so it shouldn't have literally cracked under pressure. I told a couple of friends, and we've since joked that I better be careful about what I manifest. Yes, I better focus on positive thoughts. I'm not sure if this is for parallel universe or glitch in the Matrix stories, but I'll relay my story and you can decide where it should go. My husband and I live in a rural area of a Midwestern town. We moved here about 8 years ago. Businesses are generally limited here, so when we find a business that we like and that treats us well, we give them our exclusive business. This happened with the mechanic that we found. An honest, family-owned place the next town over, run by a very nice guy and his wife. I'll call the guy George and his wife Nancy in this story. And that's the only thing that's been changed for this story. George and Nancy have 2 adopted rescue dogs that they bring to the shop often, and as we're parents of several rescue dogs ourselves, I got to the habit of taking bags of treats, or sometimes toys, for their dogs, whenever we would have to bring our car in for repairs. The gesture was well received by them and very much appreciated, so I continued to do this every single time. George would come and talk to me sometimes for a few minutes, when he would explain what's happening with my car, and invariably we always got around to some personal chit-chat. A couple years ago, the conversation steered to George telling me that he and his wife were now vegetarian because he was trying to lose some weight and his cholesterol was getting high. I remembered this for the next time I had to bring in my car. I specifically chose vegetarian treats, berries, banana, peanut butter, etc., for their dogs the next time, and both George and Nancy commented how appreciative they were that I was so thoughtful to bring vegetarian treats for their dog, since they were now vegetarians themselves. We didn't discuss their vegetarianism every time, but there were a minimum of 3 separate instances over the past couple of times where I distinctly remember their vegetarianism was mentioned. In addition to me either always bringing vegetarian treats for their dogs or a toy, if I didn't have a treat at the time. Fast forward to this past Thursday. I hadn't been there in a while, but I had to bring in my car for what I thought was going to be a simple issue. That morning at home, when I went to my cabinet to pick out the treats for the dogs, I picked up, at first, a package of meat-based treats. Then I remembered, oh wait, George and Nancy are vegetarian, let me go find a vegetarian package of treats. I put the meat ones back and picked out a box of peanut butter and banana treats. When I got to the shop, and I was checking in, Nancy came out and greeted me, asking me how I was. I said, fine. And then, by the way, here's a box of peanut butter and banana treats for your dogs, since I know you're vegetarians. Nancy and the receptionist both looked at me like I had worms crawling out of my face when I said that. Nancy took the box of treats, but looked completely confused. She didn't say anything, and I went and sat down, but now I was very confused by her reaction. It turned out that there was another issue that, unfortunately, caused me to have to leave the car there, as parts had to be ordered. George said that he would give me a ride back home since he had to do a tow for the car in the vicinity anyways. So, in the tow truck, George and I are chatting, and he talks about how he was smoking all this meat this previous weekend. I said, oh, I thought you guys were vegetarians. I guess you're not doing that anymore? He looked at me the same way that Nancy did and said, we're not vegetarian. And it literally felt like my brain broke. I stared at him in disbelief and said, wait, you told me a couple of years ago you guys were doing vegetarianism for health reasons. That's why I've been bringing your dogs vegetarian treats all this time. And you said that you appreciated it. He looked straight at me and said, no, we're big meat eaters. We eat a lot of meat, and I smoke meat practically every weekend. I shut up at this point because I knew if I said anything further, I was just going to sound insane. But I have 3 separate memories, not dreams and not illusions, distinctive memories with conversations about them being vegetarians. So, I figured I would go home and ask my husband if I ever said anything to him about George and Nancy being vegetarians for verification. He said that he doesn't remember me telling him anything about that, but he said, it's possible. You did tell me and I was distracted and didn't really pay attention, but no, sorry. I don't ever remember you saying anything about George and Nancy being vegetarians. I have been obsessing about this ever since Thursday. I cannot for the life of me figure out how I have these absolutely distinctive memories of conversations with them about vegetarianism that, in turn, had me bringing vegetarian treats for their dogs. And everyone except me is saying that it didn't happen. I know that at first glance, it could be she just confused them with someone else, but I don't bring dog treats to any other business. If they tried it and were no longer vegetarians, logic would dictate that they would have said something along the lines of, oh, we tried vegetarianism, but it wasn't for us. But they didn't. And I'm the first to admit when I forget something, and or possibly misremember it in some way, shape, or form, but that's not what happened here. So, as I told my husband, I'm either going insane, or this is a huge glitch in the matrix / parallel universe situation for me, because I will die on the hill of knowing, not believing, knowing that they told me they were vegetarian. But all of a sudden, as of last Thursday, they were no longer vegetarians and never were. And the discussions that we had about it never happened. If anyone has any suggestions as to what happened here, I would be more than willing to hear your inputs. And thanks for listening. This happened to me a couple of years ago, and I still can't find any explanation of what actually happened. I'm not sure if you can call this a glitch, but I don't know how to describe it otherwise. It was the winter of 2021, and I had just arrived in the US. Mind you, this was my first and only time visiting, and I didn't know anyone there. This specific morning, I took the train, and as soon as I entered the train, a woman started staring at me. I'm a very intuitive person, so I know when something is off or not. This didn't make me feel uncomfortable, and I could feel her good intentions. It didn't take her long to come up to me and ask me my name. The train was very loud, and I was wearing earphones, so it took me a while to realize what she had asked. Before I could answer, she said, "Your name is Elizabeth, right? You're Elizabeth?" Me, very confused in this moment, thinking, how does this woman know my name? Also, I was wearing a big winter coat and my mask because those were still mandatory, so I was, in my opinion, very unrecognizable. Besides, I didn't know anyone and nobody could have known me. But yet somehow she did know my name. Anyway, it all happened so fast. I said, yes, that was my name. But before I could ask her questions about it, she was guided off the train by the people that she was with. You could see that she didn't want to go, but she did. As she was leaving, she said, "You helped me. Thank you for helping me," making me only more confused. I'm completely positive that I had never seen that woman before in my life. I was only 21 at the time, so it's not like I could have helped her a long time ago and have forgotten. I immediately regretted not getting off the train with her to be able to talk to her. But it happened so fast. I didn't have the time to process what happened and act accordingly. I still have so many questions. Who was this woman? Did I actually help her? Will I still help her? How did she know and recognize me? I've gone all over possible explanations, but none of them explain what happened. Has anyone else had similar encounters, or does anyone have any clue about what this was, or what it means? It was the early 70s, and I was in my early 20s. I was between jobs and had no income. I was so poor that I owned exactly one pair of shoes. A pair of Red Wing heavy-duty steel-toed boots, the kind that loggers wear. I had saved up for my last job to buy these boots, spending the last of my money on them. My mom had died of cancer 2 years prior, a long and painful death. My dad was not functioning well. He did not approve of my lifestyle, and eventually he kicked me out of the house for my hippie ways. I was lost and overwhelmed with grief. I didn't know what to do, or even where to go. So, I took my dog and hitchhiked with the pack and my dog around my home state of Oregon, picking up random jobs as much as I could. Somehow, and at this point, I cannot even recall how, I ended up on the Central Oregon coast where I still live today. Regardless, I found myself in a living situation with a group of guys who had a house that they were taking care of that included a shed with 7 goats. The guys were okay, but a bit odd, and I didn't want to live in the house with them. So I fixed up the loft of the 2-story goat shed. There was a downstairs room and an upstairs loft where I slept. The goats were separated in another section of the shed. You had to climb up a ladder to get into the loft. It was an odd time, and there were multiple cults in the area awaiting a spaceship to come pick them up, so I made sure that I installed a lock, and each night that I locked the door. One of these cults was called The Two. Some folks I knew sold everything and went to get on said spaceship. So, for this and other reasons, I was careful about making sure that door was, in fact, locked tight. Those people are actually still around, since the spaceship never did arrive. Each night, with the dog sleeping downstairs by the wood-burning stove, I climbed up the ladder to my sleeping platform, took off my boots and my clothes, setting them right by my bed. A foam mattress and a sleeping bag. This night was the same as all the others. I took off my boots and clothes and went to sleep. I am and have always been a light sleeper, and this night was no different, though I slept through the entire night. The next morning, I woke up and put my clothes on and went to put on my much-needed and well-loved boots. What I saw still has me wondering after all of these years. The right boot, from the end of the lace section to the end of the boot, was cleanly cut off through the metal, exposing all of my toes with the soles intact. It was a clean cut, like a laser straight through steel. Only lasers weren't really available at that time. The entire piece was not just gone, but missing. I searched high and low and all over for that piece of my shoe, but was never able to find it. It had vanished. I had to walk around with the duct tape end of my shoe. I asked around, but no one had heard or seen anything out of the ordinary. My dog had not barked, and the goats did not make any noise like they usually did if they heard something. To this day, I do not know what happened. It is almost impossible that someone could have broken the lock into the shed, climbed the ladder to my sleeping platform, and cut through the metal of the end of my shoe without waking me up. And what would have been the point? No one in the house had any idea what happened, and I had to answer why I had a half duct tape boot for months. I'm now 73 years old, and my wife and I still ponder how this could have happened. Was I abducted? I have no memories and no clues on what could have happened. Does anybody have any ideas? Hi, Raven. This just happened the other day. So, as you know, I recently moved and was lamenting that nothing really strange happened. Well, that was corrected. I had several notebooks of my writing, all different colors, red, blue, purple, and green. The most important of these was the green one, and I made sure to pack it with the rest. When I left, I made sure that it was in the bag. When we had gotten to our motel in Indiana, I couldn't find it in my writing bag. I figured it had gotten mixed up with some other stuff, so I wasn't too worried. Then, we get to the place that we were renting from my friend and still couldn't find it. I had even talked about it with my wife and kid. Neither had seen it. I even had them try their hand at looking for it, in case my eyes were blind to the bright green notebook. They could not find it either. For the next few months, every once in a while I would go looking for it and come up empty. This particular notebook had a collection of short story starts that I often used to inspire me. You might say it was a big loss for me. I've mostly been working off of memory recently. Well, this week, in April of 2025, I found it. On a bookshelf that I bought after we moved into our new place. Just sitting on the shelf. Not buried, just out in the open. I could imagine if it had been buried in a pile I could overlook it, but the only things on top of it were clear plastic cone and area burst templates used in tabletop gaming. These things are designed to be seen through to the map so you can see who is in the blast area. So, how did I miss this notebook sitting under them? For what would now be about 2 months. I even had my kid take a look when I found it. It was just sitting on a shelf that was bought in a house 2/3 of the US away from where the notebook had previously last been seen. To me, that is just wild. I'm normally very meticulous about my writing books. I have notebooks and other examples of my writing from when I was 18. I'm now 45. So, it was a big bummer to me to have lost this notebook, and now I'm very happy that I found it. Thanks for reading, and I hope the listeners enjoy. You're traveling through a different dimension. A dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. Rod Serling's introduction to the Twilight Zone. Of course, the Twilight Zone was fiction. I, along with many others, wondered where Rod Serling got his ideas. Is it possible he experienced another dimension? Did he write fiction, or were his experiences fictionalized? This is a true story. In 1999, my mother drew up a trust and specified that I was the beneficiary, but a third party was to act as trustee by court order. As a result, I didn't have access to her estate. She left cash in a safe deposit box. I was intimately familiar with this box as I had handled my mother's affairs before she died. After 14 years, the remainder of the trust, along with the box, were given to me again by court order. The box contained something I didn't remember. 20 gold coins. All 1 ounce pure gold. No, not silver, but gold, which is currently selling at $2,800 per ounce. I held them and stared in awe, but really, how could I forget? It seemed impossible. But there they were. Minted by the US Treasury, dated 2015. The thing is, my mother died in 2010. She couldn't have purchased them. The only person who had access was the trustee. Did she put 20 gold coins in the box? No, she did not. So to sum up, my mother died in 2010. The coins were minted in 2015. They were kept in a safe deposit box, and I didn't have access to this box. Okay, so I would like to bring up a few things real quick. This has to do with abusive exes, illegal drugs, driving under the influence, and guns. So if that is a problem for you, please feel free to skip this one. I am a 31-year-old woman, and this story happened to me in 2020. I met Brittany, fake name, on Facebook dating in December of 2019 or January of 2020. That's enough of a red flag already. They let me know at the time that they identified as a woman, but they hadn't fully transitioned. This happened in Illinois, and Brittany is from Iowa. Marijuana is legal in Illinois for recreational use as of 2020. I'll skip over most of the story, but she moved in. The apartment ghosts made it known that they didn't like her. Different story. She got me kicked out because she was yelling at her video games all night when there was a noise ordinance, and we were temporarily staying in a motel 4 hours away on my dime, because I'm the only one of us with income. It was after July 16th. Brittany came into the hotel room yelling at me because she needs to go help a guy in town, about 20 minutes away. It was definitely a dealer, and I was refusing to go because I had a bad feeling about it. She was clearly drunk and high as usual. She never drove sober. I said that my head hurt and that I wouldn't be able to go until tomorrow, and she said that I always make it about myself. Yada yada yada. You know, typical narcissist stuff. She huffed and puffed into our neighbor George's hotel room to complain about me, and I tried to think of an out, but I couldn't. So I went to sleep. I was awoken by my alarm at 5 a.m. the next day, and I'm getting ready to go. Myself, Brittany, and one of her friends who knew where to get the drugs were in the car. We drove for about 20 minutes to the neighboring town. We pulled up to the house that I can still vividly remember. Brittany was trying to pressure me into going inside, and I said no, because I was doing my best to nap in the back seat. I had a really bad gut feeling, so I was just fake sleeping. Brittany and that other guy went into the house for about 15 minutes, and that feeling started getting stronger. 1 minute and 51 seconds later exactly, I heard a loud popping noise and I realized it was gunfire. Brittany and her friend came running out of the house, and I saw Brittany trying to use the car as a shield. Of course, I was in front of her. The friend Brittany brought with us took off running, and Brittany tried to get into the car but was unable to because I had locked it due to the bad feeling that I'd had. And suddenly I just felt my soul leaving my body, and I could see the car from above. I looked into the car and realized I had been shot. I remember freaking out for a few minutes, and then it all went dark and I saw a bright light. I tried to go away from it because I always heard "don't go to the light," and a familiar presence pulled me in, and suddenly I realized that I was where I needed to be, at least in that moment. I was with my twin flame, 2 to 3 of my spirit guides, and 2 of the deities who were protecting me. They were all upset. My twin flame said that wasn't supposed to happen. Why did you let that happen to her? And one of my spirit guides said that they couldn't interfere at this point because I needed to experience this to reconnect with them. They were obviously upset with them because it wasn't actually a part of my soul contract, and it was completely improved by this specific spirit guide, who apparently has a pattern of doing this. One of my more responsible spirit guides turned to the deities and asked what now. They turned to me and said that I don't have to go back this time, but I still have to reincarnate and learn more before seeing my twin flame again. But it would take 2 months for us to reconnect. I said if that's how it's going to be, I would rather come back and get the lesson out of the way so I wouldn't have to leave him again. They told me they wouldn't be able to put me back in a timeline for another 2 days, so I spent the 2 days with my twin flame. I saw that the guy Brittany brought with us was actually working with the people inside of the house who opened fire on us, and he was arrested. The other 2 people were never found, or arrested. I remembered where they buried my body parts in the yard, and apparently I was the only one who died, and Brittany ran away and hid in her parents' house. Apparently her friend really hated trans people, so she was a target due to that. And I was just collateral damage because we were dating at the time. Meanwhile, in the new timeline 2 days later, I woke up on the morning we were supposed to go to the house. But apparently that friend of Brittany's wasn't staying in the hotel anymore, and we weren't even supposed to go to that house. Brittany said that never happened, but I think she remembered too, but just wanted to have another excuse to call me crazy. Brittany and I broke up in August of 2020, and I left the new apartment I was paying for in September of 2020. I took everything with me but the microwave. She got arrested for 2 days, and I moved 2 hours away. Her parents put her in a nursing home because this isn't the first time this has happened, with her using and abusing people for money, when she has none. Her car somehow got bedbugs because she was hanging out with people that had them. I wanted to include that part because it is so satisfying. Later on, 2 years later in 2022, I moved back to the town without Brittany because, we had broken up. I started connecting with my twin flame in dreams in September of 2020 as well, and I now suffer with PTSD, so Going certain places and seeing certain things and even hearing certain songs. I was just out for a walk when I mistakenly walked up the same road that house alternate me was killed at was on. At the time, I didn't fully remember this because I had a lot of memories blocked due to the trauma. I started freaking out, saying, "No, no, no." And I turned back around and went the way that I had come. I walked down to the Casey's General Store down the road and got some snacks to take my mind off of it. I blocked that memory out again because it was too much to deal with at the time. 3 years later, I'm processing my trauma and unblocking those memories that were too much for me. Thankfully, I discovered Raven's channel, so I have somewhere to share this story. My twin flame and I are doing good, by the way. Hi, Raven. I love listening to your podcast and hearing others' experiences. They've really helped me not feel so alone and crazy with my own. I have all kinds of real stories, both my own and my mother's, but I'll start with this one. I'm not quite sure what to classify it as, honestly. I don't know if it was a premonition, timeline jump, glitch, or paranormal. When I was about 6 years old, my mom, my brother, and I lived in a townhouse. One night, I woke up from a terrible nightmare where I saw the place that we lived engulfed in flames. It was so vivid and it felt extremely real. I can't recall all the details, but that's the main thing that I remember. When I woke up during the middle of the night, I was screaming and crying for my mom. She woke up and came to console me, reassuring me that it was just a dream. Because I was so scared, it took me a while to get back to sleep, so my mom stayed up with me until I did, trying to keep me calm. The next morning, my mom overslept because she had been up most of the night trying to calm me down. When she woke up and realized she had overslept, she quickly rushed to get my brother and I up for school. We were already running late, so my mom didn't have time to cook us a whole breakfast, as she usually did, and instead gave us something quick like granola bars. As we were headed out the door, my mom noticed that something smelled a little weird. She recognized what she smelled as gas and immediately called emergency services. When they arrived, they confirmed that it was a big gas leak and mentioned that had any single electrical object been turned on, stove, microwave, toaster, or possibly even a light switch, the entire place would have literally exploded. So, because I had that dream which made my mom stay up with me, it in turn stopped it from happening, I guess. I don't know how else I could explain what happened. Thank you for taking the time to read my story, and have a wonderful day. Hi, Raven. Here's a little uplifting story that basically just happened. I hope you enjoy. I live alone with 2 cats in a quiet village. I have no friends to speak of, meaning no guests. I really like the look of a clean carpet, so I hoover at least once a day, usually twice, especially as I'm slowly decorating, health permitting. And this happened within 12 hours of hoovering the last time I did. The 17th of March is my mom's birthday, this one being the first since she passed on July 2024. I wasn't permitted to see her before she moved on or attend the funeral before she passed, because my family are awful. But anyway, on her birthday just gone, I stood facing a favorite picture of both my parents in happier times, entered into a meditative state, and wished her a sincere happy birthday. Then I told her I loved her, and I miss her. Now, I've got a huge rug over a carpet. That rug has furniture on it on 2 sides. And the next day, while doing my daily hoovering, the hoover hits a bump. So, I dropped the hoover and lifted the corner end of the rug. It wasn't pinned to the floor. I lifted up about 3 feet, and there between the rug and the carpet was a 1.5-inch screw. Here's why the screw is pertinent and a little funny. Years ago, while working with my dad while he was alive, he would often pick up an errant screw and say, "Well, I suppose this is the only screw I'll be getting today." It was a little self-deprecating inside joke that we both repeat multiple times throughout the years. So, with its importance and where it was, there's literally no other way that it could have got to where I found it, other than me sleepwalking to my tools in my utility cupboard in the dead of the night, searching for a screw, walking to the living room, lifting up the rug, etc., etc. And that just didn't happen. I tell you, this was one very well-received gift that I really needed. But it's just one story of many that confirms to me, at least, the reality of an afterlife. Again. Oh, and to add even more weirdness to it, just now while trying to replicate finding it for a video, the Hoover was gliding over the little bump under the rug, and the only way I was able to get the shot that I wanted, and it's to the point where the Hoover actually hit and stopped originally, was to put the screw under the rug vertically, with the sharp end pointing up, which I can tell you was not easy to do. I just want to say, thinking about it, this is only one of many instances of confirmation of an afterlife that I've been lucky enough to relieve, and please, if you're feeling lost, and deep in those feelings of loss while grieving for a loved one, please know that they are right there with you, waiting for you to be happy enough to say, TTFN. Thank you for reading, and I wish you all a lovely day, or evening, wherever you are. Hello, Raven. I've been listening to you for a little over a year now. I have 3 instances of glitches that I can recall. The first was when I was 19 years old. I wasn't the wisest of young men, to say the least. I didn't have much guidance as a child into young adulthood. When I was 18, I was arrested and charged with the DUI, driving under the influence. Don't judge me, audience. Like I said, I had no guidance. It took forever to reach a verdict, and I was 19 by the time my sentence was passed. Though, in between that time, not long after I turned 19, I went out with my mom and some friends to a bar. I obviously drank. When we were going down the parkway, I had to do a U-turn under the overpass to get to my destination. I took the U-turn and maintained my speed. It was one lane that it all merged into. A cop was turning right as soon as I did the U-turn, and I thought I was screwed. I was expecting a collision, or at least the flashing lights, after I turned in front of him like that. I looked back, and saw nothing. There was no place for him to turn, or even really go. I didn't know what it was at that point in my life, but I do know now that it was a glitch. The second glitch was when I was with my cousin and a few friends of ours. We decided to go to the 24-hour gas station down the road from our aunt's house. We pulled up to the gas station, and our friend Kenny had brought a beer with him. When he got out of the car, he still had his beer in his hand. I shouted from the car, "Are you gonna take the beer in with you, dude?" He looked back at me and my cousin and did that thing where you pop your head saying, "Duh," and sat his beer down. He came back out and got in the car, and my cousin and I said, "Are you going to get your beer?" And he said, looking confused, "What beer?" We told him that he had a beer with him, and we shouted at him asking if he was taking it in. And he said, "I never had a beer." We told him that he even bonked his head and said, "Duh." I told him that we will see it when we back up. When we backed out of the parking spot, there was no beer. It freaked us out a little bit, but at least I have a witness to this one. The third one happened only a couple of days ago. My son and I went to visit my friend at work. She's a very sweet and wonderful person going through a rough time. She had her daughter and her daughter's friend with her, and they were off to the side playing. My son went to go play with them, and I came over and they had snails in a square made of small rocks with leaves and water. They were pretending they were pets. I see the snails. There were about 15 of them all in one spot. I left my son to play with the girls, and I chatted with my friend a bit and played with her 10-month-old. When it was time to go, my son wanted to see the snails one last time, so I went there with him. When we walked up there, he said, "Where'd they go?" My son is 4, and I looked up and didn't see any snails. I looked away and looked back at the snails, and all of the snails were there. There was no way that I could have missed 15 snails in that small enclosure the first time. I would have questioned it more if my son hadn't said where'd they go. I also asked him if they reappeared, and when they got there. He then said they just showed up. I know these aren't big things, and they are subtle, though it has to get you thinking. I'm a very spiritual person, and I have been to heaven. It's not a geographical location, it's a frequency. A frequency we all come from, and a frequency we all return to. I know what's on the other side. What I don't fully understand is, if things cannot be there and then appear, and we all manifest what we are seeing, how far could it be taken? Thanks, Raven. I appreciate what you do. I listen to you while gardening, of which I've had at least 3 hand pruners randomly disappear into the void. There's no way that I lost them, because I kept them close, and everything was always cleaned up when I finished. Anyway, that was a little tail glitch, I guess you could say. And thanks again, Raven. Hey Raven, I'm a recent discoverer of your channel, which is a fantastic listen. Your glitch stories have had me considering a question that has bothered me for over 30 years. I'm not really a believer in simulation theory, but I believe there are oddities out there that we can't deny. The following story is one that I largely want to dismiss as one of those misremembered events of childhood, but more recent details don't fully support that either. The tale involves a set of toy stuffed kittens. As a child, my mom received a toy cat family set. A mother cat with 3 stuffed kittens in a basket. It's a beautiful set of quality workmanship and thus entered the realm of heirloom. When I was a kid, she passed the set on to me. With one error. She had lost one of the kittens in her childhood. I didn't mind. I was a kid. I loved the toy set that I had, and played with the mother cat and 2 kittens. And then, I distinctly remember this. I went to grab something under my bed, and found a stuffed kitten. It matched the set exactly. The aging, the distinct craftsmanship. This was not a set that could be replaced. So, for several years, I had the full set. I recall thinking my mom's story of losing the 3rd kitten as a child didn't make sense, because I had found the kitten in my room, in a different home than my mom's childhood home. And then one day that kitten disappeared from its basket. It was at a point where the set had become nothing but decor in my rooms, so it wasn't like I lost a plaything. But it was odd. A few years ago, I asked my mom about the cats. She swears the 3rd kitten had been lost when she was a kid. She doesn't ever remember seeing the 3rd kitten in my room. Here's the kicker. The set is still in my parents' home, and recently the 3rd kitten has reappeared. No one can explain it. I suppose this could be nothing more than false memories of events, or even some elaborate practical joke, but it's been a lifelong oddity to me. So, I've had glitches a lot. Like, when things go missing, and my mom and I would say that it must be in the sock dimension. That was before I heard about glitches, that is. So these minor things we will sweep under a rug as to what it is, but some glitches really made me scratch my head and have me questioning myself. Like when I was driving home with my cousin in the passenger seat. It was late out and there was nobody around. No other cars or anyone walking, so it was safe for me to make a left-hand turn to get on the road to my house. As I was turning, I then had to slam on the brakes so hard that it scared my cousin. We both just stared at this car right in front of us. The driver's side door of the other car was directly in front of us, and the man started yelling at us to pay attention. He drove off, and I sat there for a few seconds before pulling over completely confused. There wasn't anything around besides me and my cousin. So where did this ghost car come from? I had other glitches after that, but another huge one was in Cape May. My family goes to Cape May during the summer for a week, and we always go to this one pub to eat. We had a party of 8, and yet only 2 of us saw this glitch. We took 2 cars to the pub for dinner, and one of us had to sit on the van floor, that being my mom's friend. We'll call her Jill. She got car sick and said that she had to throw up. So once we got there, we helped her out. She didn't throw up and said that she felt better. So we continued our way to the pub. But since there wasn't room for a party of 8, we had to wait for a few minutes. As we waited outside, I watched Jill and my aunt order a drink from the bar of the outside eating area. My aunt walked away and Jill came over to us after her drink. There were 4 of us that stood near this area: me, my mom, my older cousin Steve, and his girlfriend May. Jill looked at us right in the eyes and did that famous little pee dance, saying that she really had to go. Apparently only myself and my mom were paying attention to this. My mom looked past her and saw my aunt by the bathrooms and told her, "The bathroom is over there by Alex." As she pointed across the room, Jill smiled and said thank you and then started walking in that direction. Now here's the glitch. I watched her stop and begin to dance to the band that was playing at that moment. I was confused as to why she wasn't heading to the bathroom, and I even said out loud, "Didn't she say she needed to go to the bathroom really bad?" My mom heard and confirmed to me that she did, so we all called out to Jill saying that the bathroom was on the other side of the pub. Jill stopped dancing and looked at us confused, asking why we were telling her that. Both me and my mother looked at each other and at the same time, completely shocked and confused, and then looked at the other 2 that stood with us. I asked them if they saw her say that she had to go to the bathroom, but they said they didn't see anything, which made me and my mom look at each other again silently, letting the other know that we saw it, at least. Her friend walked over and asked us again as to why we were telling her where the bathroom was. I spoke up and said, "You looked us right in the eyes and said that you had to go. So Mom told you where it was." Jill got confused and said that she never said that. We saw it. We heard it. It happened somehow, and we will die on that hill. My mom tried to explain it to her, but she only got mad at us, saying again that she never said that. And all that she said was that she had to throw up earlier, but that was all. So I laughed and said, "Well, maybe you didn't, but maybe you in a different timeline did." She got even more mad at this and walked off, saying that she said no such thing. Me and my mom looked at each other and asked, "You saw that, right?" But since it was only us who saw this, we couldn't prove ourselves, so we just let it be as it was. I'm sorry if this was all jumbled up. I've never been good at explaining things, so I hope nobody was too confused. Oh, and thank you for taking the time to read my 2 biggest glitches. The other day, I stopped at a gas station after work to fill my tank. Unfortunately, at the time, my fuel door spring was broken. When I pressed the button from the inside of the car, the mechanism deployed, but the door only opened a tiny crack and then quickly closed itself. Usually, I could stick a credit card in the side, press the button inside the car, and the fuel door would open just enough for me to pull it open as the cart fell out. This time, that didn't work. This time, it wouldn't open at all. It just popped the credit card straight onto the ground. I tried using several tools to get it open, but nothing worked. I work 79 miles from home. Yes, I know it's crazy, but it's a temporary arrangement. And I had an estimated 25 miles left in my tank, so gas was needed. At this point, I had come to the unfortunate conclusion that I was going to need to ask a stranger for help. Now, I work in the kind of city where it can be a real challenge to find someone who isn't shady at a gas station. So I'm searching, somewhat desperately, for anyone who seemed safe enough to ask for their assistance, with something very stupid. While I was looking around, I saw a pretty normal, clean-looking guy pulling up to an adjacent gas pump, in a very beat-up Chevy, which had to have been at least 20 years old. I noticed the hood was red while the rest of the body was black. Faded paint. I work in the auto repair industry, and it's definitely made me instinctively pay a lot more attention to people's vehicles in general. That's why I'm confident in seeing those details. I saw the guy get out of the car. He was wearing a gray tank top, his shades were propped on top of his head, and his hair was light brown with a little too much product in it. I decided to give it one last shot before I asked him for help, and somehow this time I ended up getting the fuel door open. This took me maybe 15 to 20 seconds. When I fully stood up again, I looked over at the other gas pump, and the guy that I had just seen was pumping gas. However, I had to do a triple take, because it was not the car that I had just seen. All of a sudden, in the place of this old beat-up Chevy, was a newish-looking Camaro. It had a custom paint job, too. Black body with thin, elegant red accent lines. Once again, same guy at the pump. I was questioning my eyesight, but it was just too profound for me to have missed the first time. And I still can't explain what happened that day. Hi. I just found your channel randomly today and thought you might like my glitch in the Matrix situation. This happened 9 years ago. I was living in a unit with my son, waiting for my ex-husband to move out of my house so I could move back in. It was brand new and had all the usual modern security stuff like key lock windows, deadlocks, and an alarm on the garage door if it was attempted to be opened without the key. I needed to go to the shops, so I got my 3-year-old son ready and went to get my car keys. I'm not exactly an organized person, but I am extremely pedantic about always putting things in their place. Because losing stuff and searching is a total waste of life, and unnecessary if things are just kept where they belong. My keys were always on the kitchen island. Always. When I got home, parking my car in the garage, which then had internal entry from the garage, the first thing I would do would be to lock the car and then put the keys on the bench. But they weren't there. I asked my son if he had taken Mummy's keys. He was pretty cheeky and very intelligent, but I knew the keys were out of his reach where I kept them. But I still had to ask because there was really no other solution. He shook his head no, and I asked if he had seen them anywhere, but again, no. I looked in all the places I could have possibly left them without thinking. The vanity in the bathroom, on the bed, in the entrance door. They were nowhere. Literally nowhere. So I looked in places that they wouldn't be. Like under the bed, in the rubbish bin, in the kitchen cupboards, etc. I got a chilling feeling, but then I remembered my mom had been over earlier. She must have taken them by mistake. I called her and said, "Hey, you must have taken my keys by mistake." She looked in her bag, in her car, but no, she didn't have them. I was crying by now, thinking someone must have come into my house while I was there and just taken them. Mum drove over and we literally turned the place upside down. They were gone. My boyfriend, who lived 160 kilometers away, came up the weekend and he turned the place upside down too. They were nowhere to be seen. I spent the next month walking everywhere with my son in his pusher, or calling cabs. I didn't want to get a key cut for the dealership because it had to be towed to the dealership and a new one to be made by them. They told me it would be about $1,000. I didn't have that money. But after a month and still no keys, my mom said that she would just give me the money because I couldn't just not drive. So I called the dealership again and told them Mom had given me the money, and they said they would send a tow truck in the afternoon on the following day. The driver turned up the next day, hooked my car up to his truck. We had a laugh about the missing keys, and I went inside, leaving him to finish what he was doing before he took off. I walked into my bedroom, which was next to the driveway, and watched as he drove off with my car attached. I then suddenly thought, look on top of the wardrobe. Now, it was not a tall wardrobe, and all three of us had already looked there several times. The keys had not been there 100%. I put my hand on top of the wardrobe, and the first thing my finger hits was the keys. I'm not joking. I raced out the door to stop the towee, who wasn't happy about his time being wasted, and brought the car back in with attitude. My mom and boyfriend both couldn't believe it because we had looked there. We even stood on a chair in one of our forensic-style searches. And that's it. Now, I've got a lot more stories to tell. So much has happened to me in my 52 years on Earth, but I'll leave them for another time. Hey, Raven. Before I start, I just need to express how grateful I am for you and your channel. Your videos have become an essential part of my everyday life, and I thank you dearly for all the work you do. Thank you. Also, I want to tell you how amazing your novel is. It's absolutely wonderful work. Thank you for that as well. Here is my glitch in the Matrix experience. The other night, my non-digital battery-operated only clock that runs by a mechanical mechanism was doing its job and ticking away. It was around 11 p.m. and the clock was working fine and showing the correct time. For whatever reason, the ticking was really bothering me, so I took the one and only battery out and placed the clock on my bed and the battery on my desk. The clock stopped ticking, the hands stopped moving, and it was stuck at around 11:01 p.m. My ears felt relieved. I glanced over at the clock at some point, which still read 11:01, and was like, there's no way it's still this early in the night. Then I remembered that I took the battery out. I decided that I wanted to put the battery back in so I could set my alarm for work. I checked my phone, and it was 3:38. I turned and grabbed the battery off of the dresser and picked up the clock. This is where it gets glitchy. I went to manually move the hands from 11:01 to the correct time before I put the battery in. The hands were already set to exactly 3:38. I was shook. I then put the battery in and it started ticking again in sync with the current time. I have absolutely no idea how this is possible. I was the only one in the room. The clock was next to me the whole time the battery was out, and it had said 11:01 moments before. In that moment, I immediately thought, this is a freaking glitch in the Matrix. I didn't experience a time jump, but my clock did. Hey Raven, I love your channel and have been listening to it for years. It's my favorite thing to play while I'm gaming on my PC. or on my 1.5 hour drive to and from work every day. Oof. Thanks for always making such great and consistent content, and I love all of the down-to-earth, wholesome messages at the end of your videos. Keep doing you. I will. Story 1, Disappearing Name Tag. I just got a new job and the receptionist had to order a name tag for me. These take several weeks to come in because they have to be approved by the company after submitting a request. We finally got my name tag in, but the receptionist handed me 2. She told me that she always orders 2 for people because everyone loses the magnetic backing and it's just easier to have a backup name tag. I thought I had my name tag in my old job for like 2 years without losing it even once, so this won't be an issue. The same day that I got my name tags, I was wearing one in my coworker's car as we got ready to carpool home. I decided to take it off. I thought I had just attached it to my jacket, but apparently the magnetic backing was all the way inside of my shirt, so I accidentally ended up dropping both halves of the name tag down into my shirt and jacket. I reached into my lap and into the inner pockets of my jacket, which are logically the most likely places they could have fallen. Nope. No sign of either of the pieces. I sat up and checked the seat. Nope. Checked under the seat, in the door panel pocket, and even in my pants pocket where it could not have possibly been. No name tag. I've asked my friend and he's looked, and we still have not found it. So I'm really glad our receptionist got me 2 name tags. Story 2, Extra Straw. The other day I was at the Starbucks drive-thru by myself. I ordered my normal iced coffee, but I got the largest size, so they had to give me an extra tall straw for it. They handed me the straw and then handed me the coffee. When they handed me the straw, I set it down on the passenger seat before accepting the coffee, so my hand would be free. My passenger seat was completely empty at the time, and it's a solid black leather, so the extra long white straw was obviously extremely visible. I took the coffee and then I pulled up past the drive-thru window, so as to not hold up the line, to the little stop sign at the end, because I wanted to put the straw in my coffee before hitting the road again. I inserted it into my coffee, watered up the paper wrapper, and threw it away in my mini cup holder trash can. I was driving for about 5 to 10 more minutes, sipping my coffee through the straw, and for whatever reason I looked down at the passenger seat. There, I saw an extra long Starbucks straw, just sitting on the seat as if it had always been there. I picked it up thinking it was maybe just the wrapper that I had misremembered throwing away, but it was a brand new straw. I checked my coffee and the straw was still in it, so I hadn't imagined putting the straw in my coffee. I have absolutely no explanation for how it got there. It's the little unexplainable things that you can't deny that really get to you sometimes. Hey Raven, I found your channel a couple of weeks back and I've been obsessed since. I usually listen to your podcast on my way to work and back, and also when I can't sleep at night. Listening to your Glitch in the Matrix stories really has me thinking back to a glitch I had just over a year ago. My boyfriend and I had gotten our first apartment together, so he was helping me go through and pack all of my things to move. As we were sorting my things, I grabbed all of my throw blankets to put into a box together. And in those blankets was one that was pretty special to me, because I got it from my school for graduating the year of 2018. It's a royal blue blanket with my school name and the year that I graduated printed on it. I've had this blanket for a few years now, and it has came with me through multiple moves. When finding it, I showed it to my boyfriend and realized that the date printed on this blanket was not the same. It said my high school name, but the year was 2016 and not 2018. I froze for a minute trying to rationalize why it would have a different date printed on it. I thought, well, maybe I accidentally switched with my sister. I even called her and asked her if she still had that blanket and if hers said 2018. She told me that she had gotten rid of hers a long time ago, and even if she didn't, that she graduated in 2014. I was kind of freaked out after this, because thinking back, I know that my blanket said 2018 on it, and that it has been in my possession since I got it. My boyfriend even thought it was super weird, and we still talk about it to this day. Was this a glitch, or what else could have happened? My name is Brian. I'm a regular guy, but your videos caught my eye. So, I am 25 years old, but when I was around 19, I was involved in a motorcycle accident in California. At the time, I had a group of friends, and I was always riding motorcycles. I worked and lived with a friend who also rode motorcycles. One night, we were on our way to a bike night, a motorcycle meetup, when at the light around the corner from the meetup, I was hit by a car while making a turn at said light. I remember the accident vividly. I remember watching so many people from the bike night, including my friends, cry as I was ambulanced away, as they were so scared. And I remember them saying, "You flew so far, I thought you were for sure dead," as they sobbed. And we're talking big Harley riders. When I got to the hospital, I remember being told that I had sustained 0 injuries, and the doctors looked at me as if I was a miracle because that was supposed to be impossible when reviewing the accident details. I went home the same night, and the world hasn't been the same since. And since then, I went from working a regular warehouse job to being a successful entrepreneur. Although I don't speak to anyone from the time it happened, I have no contact with these old friends, and I also lost the bike to the attorney company I hired, tricking me into keeping it at the time. I barely speak to my family. I live alone with my girlfriend now. Now, there's a gut feeling that I get when I think of the accident that tells me that I died that night. And somehow, I got up in some type of parallel universe or something, and kept living and created a whole new life I could only dream of. I just wanted to share this with you, as I strongly believe that there has to be a reason for me feeling this way. My story happened years ago. My girlfriend back then and I was waiting for my check to come in the mail, which it always did. Well, after it didn't arrive after 3 days, I called HR and was told that it looked as if my check was cashed 2 days ago. So I went to my bank and explained the situation to the teller. I was then directed to the manager, and the manager showed me a copy of my check with what looked like my signature on the back of the check. I explained that I never received my check, nor did I come to the bank to cash it. The manager then checked the time that it was cashed and deposited at the ATM, and to my surprise, I saw myself, or someone who looked like me, at the ATM. I would have sworn that it wasn't me, but the scariest part of this is that the person, or should I say I, was wearing the same hat and outfit that I was wearing that day. I can't explain how that was possible when I had no evidence of me ever spending or buying anything, but my check was cashed by me. I don't know how, but I totally missed a day. Hey Raven, I hope you're doing well. I have a glitch story for you. At least, it's in the realm of glitch, I think. When I was a kid, probably 6 or 7, I had a habit of sitting up in bed and reading by the moonlight, or just staring at it until I passed out. Well, one night, I was sitting up as usual, just looking at the moon. It seemed brighter than usual. Like, so bright that I could see everything in my room clearly. I just sat there staring, and I felt like I could see every detail of the moon. I felt like I may have been looking at it for 5 minutes tops. I remember blinking, just blinking, and I didn't fall asleep. I was sitting up in the same position, not even leaning on the wall for Christ's sake, but when I opened my eyes, it was bright and sunny. A perfectly blue and sunny spring morning. I didn't feel like time had passed. I didn't feel well rested or even groggy from just waking. It felt like just a second. I was still ready to go to bed, and all I wanted to do was wish the moon good night. I didn't even feel like I had been frozen in place for hours. I wasn't sore. I just can't explain what happened. I had to have fallen asleep, but it just didn't make sense. Nothing about it felt right. It is still stuck with me to this day, and I haven't experienced anything like it since. I just wish I knew what had happened. I guess it was the only time I've experienced true lost time in action. On January 26th, I placed an order comprising 10 lightweight long-sleeved shirts of various colors. Total $79.81. Having assumed I would receive them within 3 days, as is normally the case with Amazon Prime, I was disappointed to learn that they were being shipped from China and were expected to arrive by February 26th. On February 27th, the screen read, "Sorry for the delay, we've tracked your package. Its estimated arrival is now March 5th through 7th. If you don't care to wait, you may request a refund." On March 8th, the query screen read, "Your package may be lost. It possibly will arrive eventually. In the meantime, you may request a refund." I clicked Contact Seller, and the chatbot said, "Your refund of $79.81 was issued on February 16th. Clearly, this was an error. It would make sense for them to refund my money back then only if they knew that the items were unavailable. If that were the case, why tell me that the package was in transit and when it was due? If a refund had been generated, it would have been March 8th at the earliest. I checked my bank statement and was floored to see that the refund cleared on February 18th. So, is there a psychic in customer service who knew that my package would get lost? Hi, Raven. I have a short glitch in the Matrix story for you. First, a little backstory. We have 2 different types of spoons in my house. A high-quality heavy set, and a cheap, lightweight set with black plastic handles. Everyone hates using the cheap set because the handles are always loose. I actually might have that same set of spoons. They never fall off, but they don't feel solid to hold, so they get used last. So, one day I grab a yogurt out of the fridge and open up the silverware drawer. Only 3 spoons left, and you guessed it, all 3 are from the cheap set. As per my tradition, I pick up all 3 spoons and test each to find the one with the least loose handle. I pick the best of the 3 and begrudgingly put it in my yogurt. I walk back to my bedroom, sit down and pull the spoon from my yogurt, and it's changed to one of the heavy, high-quality spoons. I know it's not the most exciting story, but let it be known that sometimes the Matrix will do you a solid and upgrade a utensil.